going to show you a little bit about how to set up a video session in Pro Tools. Let's launch Pro Tools here. And I have in the background some audio assets ready to go here. I have my video files that should be ready right here. I'm going to be using the Game of Thrones, so that's kind of where my source videos are. So about ready to make a new session here. Usually for video standards, you want 24-bit, 48K. This is the Pro Tools dashboard, by the way, where you make new sessions. So I'm just going to call it video assignment. And 48K, 24-bit on my hard drive here. Let's go ahead and create that. Not too exciting. The blank Pro Tools is set up here. And so the first thing we have to do is link the video file correctly. What I've experienced is that if we just did file import video, it will link to wherever that video is, and we want it to be self-contained. So I like this idea of the source, which is in my videos folder on the documents, and my destination, which is I just made a new folder here. Sorry, a lot of sessions here. Made a new folder here. So it's right here is my destination. And you want to copy it manually over to the video files folder such as this, like option drag. There we go. Now we're ready to import. File, import, video. So the key idea there is that we copied over the video file to our video files folder in our video assignment folder. That's what I called it in this case. So there it is right here in my video files. So everything's self-contained, which means that if you take this folder and you bring it to another studio, you back it up, you hand it in as a class assignment, what have you, all the assets, the audio files and the video file in particular is contained in there. And it's going to start from the session. I usually import the audio as a reference track. Click OK. And this always asks you to where the audio files. Yes, the audio files folder. Here we got really lucky here. It found the correct frame rate of 25 frames per second, which is like a PAL frame rate, more of a European frame rate. This was downloaded from the internet, I believe. I'm not sure where this came from, but this video file has a frame rate of 25. I'm just going to put it out of sync here. This is in the session setup window, which is Command 2 on the number pad. I brought that up right there. The session setup window here. And I'm gonna make the time code right here off. So let's say it's 24 frames. See how this turned red here? That means that it's off. What do I mean by that? So this video here has a frame rate of 25 frames per second. That's what it's telling me right here. When my time code rate is 24 right here, Pro Tools is counting at a different rate, and you want them to line up. So I'm going to put it back to 25. There we go. Now it's white, and it's the correct frame rate. So Pro Tools is counting the same frame rate as the video. So oftentimes what happens is that you will have a session that might be off. It'll be red, and it'll look fine in Pro Tools, like everything will be synced up. But then when you export, it will be off. Okay, so that's all linked correctly. This is my reference track here. It's whatever sound was there from the actual video. And so Command 9 on the number pad hides and shows the video window. Cool. So now I'm just going to import a bunch of audio assets. So I have a bunch of sound effects that I've collected here, and then I can just import those in a lot of different ways. So I'm just going to go File, back to Pro Tools, File, Import Audio, and I'm going to navigate. Got a lot of different Pro Tools folders here. Been very busy working. Sort by date modified here brings me to usually the most recent one, and there's my Game of Thrones effects. I'm just going to grab all of them at once, and oftentimes you never want to add, unless there's an exception to that, but usually you want to convert, which will drag all the files. It'll make a manual copy into my audio files folder. If I were to add here, it'll link to a different folder again. So you got to be really careful. There are a lot of these little details. So in general, when you're importing files, copy or convert. Copy or convert. Copy is not an option here because it's not the same sample rate. Usually don't want to add unless, like, you copied the files manually to your audio files folder and you're just adding them into the session. But that would be the only case you'd wanted to add them if they're already in the audio files folder. In this case, I'm just going to convert. Click done. Let this crank. So what else can we think about while this bar is recording right here? Not much. So I'm going to bring in my audio assets. I'm going to primarily create the layers of backgrounds and sound effect in this. There's no dialogue in this one, so it's really backgrounds and sound effects. I don't even have any music assets, so I'm just going to kind of start there. And we're going to always usually import to the clip list, which is going to come over here. I'm going to hide and show this in the corner right there, that little button right there. So here's my audio assets. All the files, when they're imported, they're selected. So all these are selected right now. We can see the difference between stereo and mono files. Mono ones just don't have the little triangle there. They don't say stereo next to them. And so I'm just going to start to craft a background here. Another thing we could do is import your template. If you have a template, you could import a lot of those tracks, which would have all of your submixes and track names selected correctly. But I'm just going to create a basic ambient here. I'm just going to start dragging in some files. So I've got some wind, and I can option, click and hold to sample the sound. I'm just going to do this real fast. So we got some wind. This is kind of like a blizzard. So let's see here. Yeah, maybe this would be some background fighting sounds, which are really loud, by the way. If I solo that, Shift S, we'll solo that. So I want that to be really, really quiet. And as we were talking about in class, we can do a little bit of a low pass filter on that to make it sound even more background. So I'm going to roll off those high frequencies. And I might even automate the volume there. But I'm just going to, mix that in place. And this is usually at the beginning of the scene. The battle is still kind of going on a little bit, where people are kind of fighting here, right? So then I'll fade that out at the end of it. Maybe just trim this back. So this is great. So when you're making edits, you can kind of see all of the frames refresh. So right around here, everyone's like going to be about risen from the dead. So all the zombies are going to come to life. So I'm just do like maybe a short fade out there. Oops. I'm just going to grab this fade right there. Come on, fade. There we go. I can kind of change the scope of that fade. So I'm going to gradually fade that out. I'm going to bring this windy in here. That's going to be kind of always going on in the background. And I'm just going to label these. I've got 2 winds. I'm going to go BG, wind, and that's pretty much all I need right there. And I'm doing command up, down, left, right. Will go between the tracks. Called it BR. I meant BG there. There we go. BG, BG again. Windy stone room. And I'm just going to layer these ambiances here. And BG fight. That's great. So now I've got 3 kind of layered sound effects there. So that sounds nice, and I'm going to layer it perhaps with something here. Right? Yeah. And so this isn't long enough to go for the duration. So one thing we can do, this is how you make a loop. Step 1, split it in the middle. Step 2, drag it over here, do a crossfade. Oops. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to trim off a little bit here, so I can get actually a legit crossfade. And let's just review that step again. So here's my original clip. So if I were to loop it right here, if you think about it, if I go play it from here and play it from here, it will loop around just perfectly. So I'm going to split it in the middle. Step 1, split it, drag it over here, trim it back so we have a little bit of crossfade material. Do a real quick crossfade with it. Now this clip will be perfectly loopable throughout the duration. So I'm just going to duplicate that. Something like that. There's my little loop right there. We'll talk about that in class next time. Yeah, so I'm just layering my background ambiances here. I'm going to switch over to the mix window. I'm going to submix them real quick. I'm using the key command Option Shift, which means that these tracks are selected right now. I don't need my instruments here. Hold on. get rid of my instrument view because it's taking up a little bit of real estate. Because I was in a session using MIDI stuff, but I don't really need that right now. So these tracks are selected. Again, Option is everything. Option Shift is just the selected tracks. So I'm going to Option Shift, change the output to bus 1, 2, make a new stereo aux input, patch it in here to bus 1, 2 to set up a submix, solo safe it, of course, and then let's color code these because it just looks nicer. It's just so I can recognize all my backgrounds to be light blue, for example. And then I'm going to label this track BG sub. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. We have these background tracks, and that's a good stopping point. I'm going to do a little bit more here. So if I wanted some particular sound effects, of course you need to spot sound effects. And again, spotting is just kind of playing through the session. Just playing through the session. Oh, right there, FX footsteps. And this is a little bit loud still. There's some footsteps there. What else do we have here? Maybe some breathing sounds here. Yeah, the fighting is kind of over now, so maybe some wave sounds there. I'm just gonna go with one more sound here. Maybe I'll spot one more sound. I think there's a cut to, oh, here's something happening. He's raising the dead. FX, dead raise, right? Something's going on there. So people are starting to, maybe we'll have like some mystical sound here going on. But anyhow, I just wanted to show you some basic cutting of sound effects. And spotting is really important here to identify where we're gonna put these things. So do I have any breathing here? Breath heavy. That's a bit intense. That looks good right there. So the breathing one, I'm just going to drag it down here. And you'd be surprised, even though it sounds kind of really close mic, because most sound effects are going to be close mic'd and intense. And it's just a little bit too fast. So I'm going to zoom in on that. And I'm just going to break those up here. Just tab over, hit tab, tab, spread that out. I'm just going to align these. So it's just a basic alignment of sound effects here. And you can see his movement right there. There's one. And this may not work. It might be... Maybe one last one. Let's see what that looks like now. That one was a little bit aligned. So you can visually align them, and the frame rate will adjust. I like this little tip here. If we have our grid mode set to timecode, which is the default time measurement in film sound, timecode, 1 frame, I can then nudge plus and minus on the number pad. Oops, I'm a different frame. I need to be time code. There we go. I think I was on the grid mode there. So I wanted to be time code, 1 frame, and then I can nudge. And that one was a little bit misaligned. So right there, maybe. Is that good? Let's test it. Yeah, that looks good. So, and then, of course, they're a little bit loud, so I'm going to bring them way down. Even that's a little bit in my face, so I'm going to label these, of course. FX, give them a little prefix there. Breath heavy male. Great. And then I'm just going to copy. Did I have an EQ? Of course I did. It's right here. Option, drag it over. Boom. Oops, but they have a little bit of a, that's a stereo file. This is a mono file, so I'll just add a new one. I'm just going to use a fab filter. And I'm going to do a little high cut here. Same thing as low pass. Yeah, So it just mellows it out. It gets the distance correct as well. So because you have a lot of high frequency, it's like you're 2 feet away from things. So it's a little bit intense. And I'll do one more sound effect here. Just close that window up. Usually you want a couple monitors to do this correctly. Do I have any footsteps in here? Footsteps might be a little bit harder. There we go. I'm not even sure what these are here. Let's grab these. And do a new track here. These are stereo, by the way. And I'm not even sure if they're appropriate. Shift S to solo there. A little bit intense there. But then you can hear this one is in interior, so I guess I'm going to have to go with these right here. And I'm just going to chop up some of these, zoom in right in. I'm going to tab over, split it. Option tab. Close up this color thing. Option tab. I'm just going to split some of these. Oops. And then I'm just going to use this as a way to align. And there's still like a little bit intense here, but hey, I got to work with something here. So I'm just going to drag these over. So you can like edit things up and splice them in. Any sound effect, we could layer stuff. I want kind of more of a wooden thud sound. And here's where of course I spotted that, so that's why it's really important. So here's where I'm going to use that nudge technique again. Very, very powerful. And of course, these are going to be like kind of acousmatic sounds, so maybe these would be off screen. So let's trim this out, get a few more of these. So maybe they're a lot quieter. But let's just align the ones that are right around there. That one could work. We'll see. Good enough. Yeah, I guess the timing was pretty good, but I would just turn these quite down a lot. Even then, again, I'm gonna have to EQ that to make it sound kind of convincing. And the pace is a little bit fast here, so I'm just gonna split these up a little bit. I'm just using B to split those up, and I'm gonna kind of create some more before with the same timing. Yeah, and so you gotta be really subtle with footsteps. They're very subtle. These are way too intense. Then I might have a few where he slows down. Right there. Oops. Big thing you don't want to do is repeat the exact same sound. It's very obvious that it's like kind of the same thing. So I'm going to turn these down even more. This one is a different volume. Bring that one down. And then I'm going to EQ them. And that's soloed right now. But not bad. It's okay. It's a little bit intense, but there we go. So you can get more low end if you just low pass it. Okay, now within context. There, we're getting there. A little bit more realistic. So yeah, that's just kind of a basic starting point of the sound design. So hopefully that helps, guys.